But there are a lot of people out there listening that this was already underway before they were born. Before they were born.
How's that?
Well, several ways. It's very connected to being in fear. So if you're a second or third generation Holocaust survivor and you hear the stories, you manifest the same kind of PTSD. Or if you're an African American woman in this culture, they have a lot of what we call sexual anorexia, or shutting down being sexual, because they hear the stories of slavery that are unresolved and it's passed from one generation to another. So you hear those stories. Or you have, like in my family, my father was very violent, and they would tell jokes about it. And yet I would see him as violent, and I'd see everybody laughing at it, and it would seem so incongruent to me because it scared me to death. And then everybody, Dad lost his hat again because he's in another fight in a bar. So what we know is that the previous generation brings in history, they bring in some DNA, like most addicts have some DNA of nomadic tribes. We know that the dopamine strands are shorter for people who are alcoholic, eating disordered, attention deficit disorder, Tourette's, that they already have a dopamine problem. I mean, we know that stuff. This is before they're really even out of the gate. The next thing that happens, by the age of 2, there's a thing that happens between a parent and a kid where the kid has what is called the gaze of the parent. And what it means, I'm not just changing diapers, feeding, what have you, but where the parent just spends time looking at the child. Very important, they call it attachment. Only 8% of sex addicts get into what we call secure attachment. Basically, they have problems in how to connect with people. Another way to define addiction is a failure to bond.
A failure to bond. That's interesting.
And that affects the brain fundamentally. And then, if there's fear in the family as they're growing up and they're abused, the worst at age 10 for girls and 12 for boys, if it happens at those ages, how the brain actually is structured changes. And all these neurochemicals that excite the brain and make you feel more alive, stress chemicals, we are convinced that stress, first of all, there's a little piece of the brain on the bottom, term for it is corpus callosum, but what it does is it puts in the front part of the brain a chemical called oxytocin that helps you make decisions. That is smaller in kids who are very afraid growing up. Mm-hmm. So they can't inhibit. Their ability to stop themselves is affected. And then if they're exposed between the ages of 12 and 16, if you get drunk, your chances, say at 13 or 14, chances of being an adult alcoholic, very high. If you smoke, very high. If you gamble, very high. Now think internet.
Yeah.
So it's a big problem.